Death has a sound at sea. Sometimes it's the sudden snap of a rope. Sometimes it's the roar of water in a storm. And sometimes it's just silence. Tonight, we dive deep into one of the most haunting, baffling, and polarizing true crime mysteries in modern American history. A case involving staggering family wealth, cold-blooded murder, a mother who vanished forever, and a son who survived 8 days alone on the open ocean, only to later die before he could ever take the stand. This is the story of the Carmen Family Murders, a case where every theory feels plausible, yet nothing is certain. A case where the only person who knew the full truth is gone. A grandfather shot in his bed. A mother lost without a trace. A son was found drifting alone in a raft. And millions of dollars at the center of it all. Prepare yourself. This is Blood in the Water. The Carman Family Murders. Before the tragedy came, the wealth and the inheritance that so many believe lies at the center of this story. The man who built the empire was John Chakalos, a self-made real estate magnate from Windsor, Connecticut. Through decades of development, rental properties, and investments, he amassed a fortune estimated between $40 and $60 million. He was generous and charitable. He was also beloved by most who knew him. But wealth on this scale often cast long shadows. John had 4 daughters, Linda Carman, Elaine Chakalos, Suzanne D'Annunzio, and Lori Chakalos. And it was Linda's son, Nathan Carman, who would eventually stand at the center of a storm that tore the family apart. From a young age, Nathan was different. He was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a form of high-functioning autism. People who knew him described him as intelligent, literal, socially awkward, and often emotionally detached. He had trouble reading social cues, relating to others, and trouble understanding how his words and actions were perceived. Some described him as logical and harmless. Others described him as cold, isolated, and unpredictable. Teachers recalled his intense focus on certain subjects like mechanical systems, fishing, infrastructure, and forensic details of boats. Nathan excelled at tasks requiring precision, but he struggled with anything requiring emotional nuance. His mother, Linda, protected him fiercely. Too fiercely, some say. She homeschooled him at times, kept him away from other family members, and made excuses for his behavior. The bond between mother and son was unusually complicated, loving, dependent, and sometimes fraught with tension. No matter what happened, Linda always defended him. Even when others grew uneasy, as Nathan grew older, the tension rose within the extended family. Some relatives believed Linda coddled her son too much. Others believed Nathan had become increasingly resentful, especially over money. As he moved into adulthood, his behavior sometimes alarmed people. He became isolated. He struggled with employment, had conflicts with neighbors, displayed paranoid thoughts about being misunderstood or mistreated. He even expressed frustration about not being financially stable. Some family members began keeping their distance in the wake of this bizarre behavior, except for one, his grandfather, John. John tried to include Nathan in family life. He took him shooting and fishing. He supported him financially and gave him guidance, which makes what happened next all the more disturbing. December 20th, 2013. It was just before dawn when one of John's daughters discovered the horror. John Chakalos, age 87, had been shot dead in his own bed, still lying under the blankets. There was no sign of forced entry, no struggle, and no theft. Just a single gunshot wound to the head, and the murder weapon was never found. There were only 2 keys to the house, one John kept and one that Linda possessed. Police immediately began asking questions. Who would kill an elderly man loved by all? Why was nothing stolen? Why wasn't there a struggle? Who knew his schedule? Who knew where he slept? The answers were unsettling. Only someone close to him could have done this. John owned a distinctive .308 caliber rifle. After his death, it vanished. Nathan had recently been shooting with him. Nathan also had access to the home, and Nathan had been the last person seen possessing a rifle, matching the description. Police asked him where the gun went. Nathan said, "I don't know. I must have misplaced it." Investigators considered this impossible. A .308 rifle doesn't simply disappear, not from a house where nothing else was taken. But there was more. Nathan admitted to replacing the hard drive on his computer around the same time, a move investigators saw as deliberate destruction of potential evidence. But without a witness, without the gun, without a confession, the case stalled. It went cold. No arrests were made. But inside the family, suspicion grew like rot beneath the floorboards. Some of John's daughters believed Nathan murdered their father. Others believed he was incapable, and one, his mother, insisted he was innocent. September 17, 2016. 3 years after the murder of John Chakalos, Nathan invited his mother, Linda, on a fishing trip aboard his small boat, a 31-foot aluminum vessel named the Chickenpox. The plan was, supposedly, to catch tuna near Block Island. Linda agreed, despite family members urging her not to go. She trusted her son. She believed he was harmless. She always believed him. Before dawn broke, the mother and son duo drove from Connecticut to the marina in South Kingstown, Rhode Island. Security cameras captured their arrival. Linda carried supplies, and Nathan carried fishing gear. They boarded the vessel, and then the ocean swallowed them. The Chickenpox wasn't just a boat in need of maintenance. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Before the trip, Nathan unilaterally removed the trim tabs and 2 bulkheads. He replaced critical steel screws with weaker ones and performed repairs so shoddy that experts later called the boat structurally unsound and dangerously compromised. He claimed he did this to improve handling. Marine experts called it sabotage. When the insurance company investigated months later, they concluded the damage made the boat almost guaranteed to sink in rough water. On top of this, Nathan disabled the boat's GPS and removed safety equipment. None of this made sense. Unless the sinking wasn't an accident, and it was actually the plan. Hours after leaving shore, Linda stopped responding to her sister's text messages. This wasn't normal for her. When she missed a planned check-in, panic set in. Linda's family called the Coast Guard, and a massive search began. There were helicopters, boats, aircraft, radar, and sonar. Days had passed. There was no debris, no flare, no body, no nothing. The mother and son were gone without a trace. For 8 days, the ocean remained silent. That is, until a ship passing between the U.S. and Bermuda spotted something small drifting on the horizon. It was a bright yellow raft, and only one survivor. Nathan Carman was alive. He was malnourished, dehydrated, sunburned, but he was alive. He was found sitting calmly in the raft, clutching a small duffel bag. Inside the duffel bag were food rations, supplies, a few personal items, and a map outlining his route into deep waters far beyond the normal fishing range. When rescued, he told a simple story. The boat sank suddenly. I couldn't find my mom. I searched for her, but she never came. He claimed the hull just filled with water. Oddly, he never used flares, never radioed for help, and never activated an emergency signal. He just got into the raft and waited. The crew who rescued him said he was eerily calm, emotionally flat, almost uninterested in conversation. He showed no tears, no panic, and no grief. Some chalked it up to shock. Others suspected something much darker. When the Coast Guard got Nathan into an interview room, investigators noticed immediate red flags. His story kept shifting. He contradicted himself repeatedly. He couldn't explain why the GPS was removed. He couldn't explain why the boat took a route 70+ miles offshore. He couldn't explain why he made no distress call. And he couldn't explain why he did nothing to help his mother. He gave flat, emotionless answers. Everything sounded like it was rehearsed, except for the parts that didn't make sense at all. Investigators left the interview convinced of one thing. Nathan's behavior wasn't normal for a grieving son, and the boat sinking wasn't an accident. 3 years after the unsolved murder of John Chakalos, the case faded from headlines. The investigation was stagnated. The missing gun was still missing, and no one had been arrested. Life for the Carman and Chakalos families attempted to move forward, at least on the surface. But something dark was still brewing quietly, something that would explode into national attention. And once again, everything would revolve around the same man, Nathan Carman. Surveillance cameras captured Nathan and Linda at the Ram Point Marina on the afternoon of September 17th. Nathan was calm, focused, and stoic. Linda appeared anxious, though it's unclear whether she feared the trip or was simply tired. They boarded and Nathan fueled the boat. They left the harbor around 11:30 p.m., heading southeast into open ocean. It was the last time anyone saw Linda alive. This is crucial. There was no Mayday call, no distress signal, no radio message, not one. For a boat that Nathan later claimed sank catastrophically, the total absence of an emergency communication was alarming. Investigators would scrutinize this point heavily. Why didn't Nathan radio for help? Why wasn't the emergency beacon activated? Why didn't he use the boat's equipment? Nathan later provided an answer. According to him, everything happened too fast, but experts disagreed. And they disagreed loudly. At some point in the early hours of September 18th, Nathan said he was awakened by a loud bang. The boat, he claimed, began rapidly taking on water. Here is how Nathan described it. I was asleep. Something slammed the boat. I woke up and saw water flooding the deck. The engine compartment filled immediately. The boat was going down. I couldn't find my mom. Then I got into the raft. This was his official story, but even as he said it, investigators were already raising eyebrows because the physical facts told a different story. When news broke that Nathan had survived, relatives gathered at the Chakalos estate, expecting relief, tears, and gratitude. But according to multiple statements, what Nathan said when he got the phone was shocking. He didn't ask about funeral plans. He didn't express grief. He didn't ask what the family knew. He said one thing: "Do I have access to my inheritance?" Those were the first words several relatives claimed to have heard. Whether Nathan intended it or not, the implication was chilling. One aunt said she dropped the phone in disbelief. Another said she immediately thought he killed them both. This marks the moment the family turned on him publicly and permanently. As soon as Nathan was brought ashore, the Coast Guard, FBI, and local police essentially swarmed him. What they found next built the backbone of the government's eventual case. Experts examined the chickenpox's maintenance records, repair receipts, and inspection photos. What they determined stunned investigators. Key finding number 1. The boat's trim tabs had been removed. Trim tabs are metal plates on the boat's hull that help keep the vessel balanced. Removing them leaves 2 large holes that sit below the waterline. This causes slow but inevitable flooding, destabilization, increased risk of capsizing, and it makes the sinking appear accidental unless someone knows what to look for. A boat does not lose trim tabs by accident. You have to remove them with tools, professionally, deliberately. Nathan had personally removed them. He admitted this, but he insisted he did so because he thought they were causing vibration issues. Experts said that explanation made no sense. Key finding number 2. The bilge pump was malfunctioning. A bilge pump removes water from the hull. Nathan had replaced it shortly before the trip. But investigators found evidence it was installed improperly, which reduced its effectiveness. Was this incompetence? Or part of a larger plan? The FBI was leaning heavily toward the latter. Key finding number 3. Nathan went against weather and safety advice. Nathan took the boat, too far offshore, in marginal weather at night, toward deep seas known for rough conditions, with only his mother, after removing critical safety hardware. It was the perfect storm almost literally for a tragic accident, and that scared investigators, because it seemed more like a recipe. When investigators cross-referenced the 2013 murder of John Chakalos with the 2016 disappearance of Linda Carman, the parallels were glaring. The only witness in both incidents was Nathan. There was a potential multi-million-dollar inheritance involved, unusual, improbable, poorly explained events, evidence of planning, a missing .308 rifle, a sabotaged vessel. Several investigators later said privately, "We believed we were looking at the same killer, but belief is not proof," and proof was still out at sea. By October 2016, the FBI had fully taken over the investigation. Nathan's house in Vermont was searched for GPS logs, boat parts, firearms, financial documents, hard drives, and writings. Agents would seize his computer, cell phone, boat equipment, tools, and correspondence. They also interviewed Nathan for 8 hours. The transcripts later revealed a strange, tense series of contradictions. Nathan said he had no idea what caused the sinking, but he had removed the trim tabs. He had changed the bilge pump. He had gone far offshore without reason. He didn't radio for help. He didn't signal. He didn't look for his mother. He didn't even shout her name. Investigators said he appeared emotionless the entire time. One agent described him as flat, rational, and almost rehearsed. While the criminal case moved slowly, Nathan faced a new threat: a $2 million insurance lawsuit. National Liability and Fire Insurance Company refused to pay out the policy on the boat. Their argument was that Nathan intentionally sank the chickenpox. The civil court filing spelled it out. He sabotaged the boat. He lured his mother offshore. He planned to drown her. He was motivated by inheritance money. He hoped her death would appear accidental. These filings were public. They were explosive. And they were far more direct than the criminal investigation at that stage. Nathan was enraged. He insisted he was innocent. In court, he testified, "If I intended to hurt my mother, I would not be alive today." But the counter-argument from the prosecution slammed him. "You survived because you planned to survive." Linda's sisters testified that Nathan had a history of violent behavior. He had threatened his mother. He had mental health struggles. He was obsessed with money. Linda feared him at times. And he had argued with his grandfather over money. They publicly said what they had whispered for years: "We think Nathan killed John and Linda, and that is he dangerous." This destroyed Nathan's public reputation and his personal world. But civil court does not equal criminal guilt. The burden of proof is lower. Still, it painted a devastating portrait. To understand the theories around Nathan's guilt or innocence, the documentary now shifts tone. Deeper, more psychological. Nathan was not a typical criminal suspect. He had been diagnosed with learning disabilities as a child. He struggled socially. He was described as literal, rigid, and overly logical. He had few friends, and he spent most of his time alone. But here's the key complexity. He was highly intelligent, gifted in mechanics, sensitive to detail, unusually calm under stress. These traits, depending on who interpreted them, painted two entirely different pictures. Theory 1. Nathan was a calculating killer. Supporters of this theory point to motive: millions in inheritance. Means: gun, boat sabotage. Opportunity: both victims alone with him. Lack of emotion: his survival contrasted with Linda's disappearance, his pattern of behavior, his immediate question about money. 2 deaths tied to him, 3 years apart. He fit the textbook profile of a financially motivated family annihilator. But others disagreed. Theory 2. Nathan was a socially awkward, misunderstood outsider. This theory, held by a minority of commentators, says Nathan had cognitive disorders. He interpreted questions literally. He was emotionally flat but not violent. He made poor mechanical decisions. The boat sinking was due to negligence, not murder. His mother volunteered for the trip. The missing gun had no definitive link. His survival behavior reflected confusion, not guilt. Supporters say the narrative was shaped by grief-stricken relatives, desperate for answers. They argue the police never proved anything. This deep divide into a monstrous killer versus misunderstood loner continues to this day. By 2018, the FBI's investigation accelerated. New forensic analysts reconstructed the boat's sinking using mathematical modeling, saltwater corrosion studies, trim tab simulations, and stability calculations. Their conclusion was blunt. The chickenpox sank because its trim tab holes had been improperly sealed. This was done before the trip, and it was not an accident. At this point, behind closed doors, prosecutors began drafting a criminal case, but something was still missing. Proof that Linda died intentionally and not accidentally. Without a body, that was hard to prove. Very hard. And then, something happened that changed everything. On May 1, 2022, nearly 6 years after Linda vanished, the U.S. Attorney's Office unsealed a bombshell indictment. Nathan Carman was charged with murder on the high seas, fraud, conspiracy, and intentional destruction of property. The indictment explicitly alleged that Nathan shot his grandfather in 2013 and killed his mother in 2016. Both murders were motivated by inheritance. The boat sinking was staged. Nathan orchestrated a years-long fraud scheme. This was the first time the government formally connected both deaths as part of a single criminal plan. Nathan was arrested in Vermont. His mugshot showed a calm, expressionless man staring into the camera, almost as though none of this surprised him. He maintained his innocence. He prepared for trial. And then everything changed again. On June 15, 2023, Nathan was found dead in his jail cell at the Cheshire County Correctional Facility. He was 29 years old. Officials ruled it a suicide. There was no note, no explanation, no confession. He simply died taking every answer with him. And with his death, the federal case collapsed. There would be no trial, no cross-examination, no verdict. 2 deaths were now 3, and still no legal resolution. Nathan's death sealed the case in permanent ambiguity. When Nathan Carman died in that New Hampshire jail cell in June 2023, something eerie happened, almost poetic in its darkness. Every question investigators had spent nearly a decade pursuing. Every conflicting statement, every forensic theory, every unanswered mystery, all of it froze in time. And for the first time, the story of the Carmen family ended not with a trial, not with a confession, but with silence. Whether that silence was an admission of guilt or the tragic fate of an innocent man overwhelmed by accusation, we may never know. But what remains is a case so layered, so bizarre, and so filled with contradictions that even seasoned investigators still debate what really happened. Was Nathan Carman a cold-blooded killer who murdered his grandfather for money and pushed his own mother into the ocean 6 years later to finish the job? Was he a troubled, socially awkward young man whose clumsiness and confusion accidentally cost 2 lives? Was he a misunderstood loner or a calculating predator? Did he kill to inherit millions, or did he die under the weight of accusations he couldn't bear? Did he know the truth of his mother's final moments, or did the ocean keep that secret from him too? In the end, there is no jury, no verdict, no final answer. There is only what remains: a boat at the bottom of the sea, A missing rifle buried somewhere in New England soil. A mother disappeared forever into the depths. A grandfather who died without a witness. A son who left the world without speaking. And a family torn apart by tragedy so large it echoes through every courtroom and obituary. What truly happened to the Carmen family died with Nathan. The sea keeps its secrets. But every so often, when the tide pulls just right, when the waves whisper against the shore, we hear echoes of what was lost. John Chakalos, Linda Carman, Nathan Carman, gone. All gone. 3 names carried now only by memory and by the endless churn of water beneath the sky. The truth is out there somewhere, drifting, sinking, waiting. Maybe someday a clue will surface. Maybe the ocean will give something back. But until then, this remains one of America's most haunting unsolved family tragedies. This is the story of the Carmen family. This is the story of murder, money, and mystery. This is the story of a truth swallowed by the sea. This is Blood in the Water. The Carmen Family Murders. Do you think Nathan Carman was a calculating killer or a deeply misunderstood survivor caught in a storm he didn't create? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Case closed, at least on paper. In your view, what did we miss? Comment below and make sure you like the video and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. Until next time, stay obsessed.